so let it be written, so let it be done. This is Tabletop Terrors, and in this video, we're going to talk to you about how you can get adventure ideas from a lot of different things around you. Things that are already created, all the hard work's been done, but how do you know what parts to take and how to use them in your own stuff? That's what we're going to talk about today. James, what's your trick?
So, for reusing content, especially for like some of the Wizards of the Coast supplements that come out, I'm a really big fan of reading things like that, but I don't often get around to running them, or maybe I don't like this part a little bit or that part, but I just love having the art and seeing it, everything like the Icewind Dale ones, it's a little bit historical to me. So I like to own them, but I don't get much use out of them. So what I started doing is looking through and trying to find ways to apply the decisions they make in the book to decisions that I make, right? So they have engineered a situation in, say, Icewind Dale, where all of these things are coming together specifically. I isolate that and go, okay, why did they do that? And then how can I apply that? For example, a cool thing I saw, I'm a really big fan of the Dungeons and Dragons versus Rick and Morty, like little box set that came out. And it's very cheesy, but it does, I really like Rick and Morty, and it does a lot of clever things. But one fun thing it does is it has a trap where the roll table is a roll, when you spring the trap, it's a roll table of narrative effects that happen to you. And written later into the supplement are things that happen if some of the narrative effects take place. For example, a large mouth door licks you with its big tongue. One of the effects is the trap effectively farts on you, making you smell bad later. Somebody mentions it. It's a trap that just by going off has changed nothing mechanically in the game, but it adds something to it. And so you can take that concept and bring it over to your world simply by going, okay, well, this trap isn't going to hurt them. Maybe it's going to insult them. Maybe it doesn't have to be funny. Maybe it's going to make something else happen in the world. Maybe it's just going to upset a rock giant that's around the corner. What we've taken from a fart trap is the idea that don't get caught up in the fact that a trap has to do a D6 of damage and have a reflex save, that I can do all manner of things in the world. And that's one way that you can kind of reuse content that you own in another way.
Yeah, so what I generally like to do, because I don't usually run modules whole cloth. I don't think I ever have. It just doesn't really work with the way that I play. But there is a lot that you can glean from other content that can change the way that you make your own content, which is the thing that I find most useful when it comes to not just modules, but like any sort of media, whether it's an RPG book, a movie, a TV show, a video game. You can look at the ways that they create their worlds or design any of their systems, and you can use that as inspiration for ways that you can build your own stuff. So one example that immediately comes to mind for me is in terms of world building specifically. I'm a big fan of the Dark Souls game series, the Dark Souls games, Bloodborne, all those games. And specifically, one of the things that I like about them is the way that the world building is done in the Dark Souls games leaves so much open space where you might come across a statue that's very intricately designed, and you can tell that there's some sort of history there that like, oh, well, the head of the statue's cut off. Like, who did that? Why did they do that? Was it like a god and this is a temple that they've now desecrated? Or was it a historical figure who's now like looked down upon, so they cut the head off as a sign of disrespect? And most people, when they build worlds, if they're going to put in elements like that, they feel like they have to have an answer and a way to figure it out. Like, if the players ask, who's the statue of? Do we know? Roll a check. No, you don't know. Like, but if we did know, I would have had this whole story that I would have read out. And now I'm kind of sad that they failed because I had this big thing and now I don't get to show them. You can just say, no one knows. And if the players say, okay, but really, like, out of character, like, what is it? I'm curious. I don't know. Like, it's okay to like have open space in your worlds, and like, in a sense, like, I haven't stolen any of the content of Dark Souls. If I make a world, I'm not taking the name of the character or the idea of this room in this castle and putting it in my world. It hasn't like inspired the world building in that way, but it has in the sense of like, I want that sense of mystery, that sense of like, there's history to this place that you can't discover. And it's not that I know it and I'm not telling you, it's that the setting is that history is unknown. and that counts for me as the person running the game and making the setting too. And like, it's okay to have all that open space and to like let the world be that, which is like a big revelation. You sort of don't understand what you can make until you kind of see other people make things like it. And that was sort of a big revelation for me. And you can take the same idea, you know, from actual RPG books and stuff too. So you could see something like Curse of Strahd, where it's like, okay, it's like a spooky atmosphere with a vampire lord who's kind of pulling all these puppet strings. Like, you could see that and say like, okay, I'm not going to run Curse of Strahd. I don't even want to run vampires, but like, I like the idea of a world where the villain is sort of omnipresent, in control, and is messing with the players. Maybe it's a dragon. Maybe it's, you know, maybe it's a game that's set on Earth and it's just another guy who's, you know, got a hold of technology. You know, there's a bunch of ways that you can take it, but you can see the idea and say like, I like the idea of a world that's like this. I'm going to make a world similar in the fact that it has the same concept, even if all of the elements in the world itself are totally different. And like that to me is the most useful thing that other RPG books and other content in general can have, is like, oh, I can make a world that's like this. I didn't think to do that, but now that I've seen it, it's a tool in my toolkit that I have when I create. And you can pick up a whole bunch of different tricks from a whole bunch of different places, and now suddenly you're making your own stuff with purpose and with design and thought that you might not have ever reached otherwise, without ever having to actually run the Curse of Strahd adventure or make a Dark Souls game, you know, or whatever it is that you might be doing.
All right, so there's a quote that I've heard James say before, and it's, the best time to look for a new job is when you don't need one. And I think the same goes for adventures. When you have a game in 2 hours, it can be really difficult to meaningfully flip through a splat book and find something good. You're kind of like, I don't know, what am I going to run? Oh, this looks fine. So what I've found is I have PDF copies of like stuff from Drive-Thru RPG, or I try to get PDF copies and I put them on a Dropbox. And the trick is I will do my prep by reading those when I don't need them. So just flip through, kind of read something, and then if I find something that I love, I just put it in an idea document of encounters. And so what I'll write, it'll say like, you know, whatever PDF, like it could be Stars Without Number, it could be any random PDF. It doesn't even have to be an RPG book, but specifically that's one of the ones that I will read on purpose. And then I'll put the name of the book, and then I'll put the page, and then like a little note of why I liked it, so that when it is time to pick an encounter or something that I want to run, I can do it from a menu, which is way less stressful. And then if I pick my top 3 from the list, that I'm like, oh, let me refresh myself on that. Cool. This one's great. And then, of course, you're going to add stuff that's inspiring you now. The movie you just saw on Amazon Prime or Netflix, or the comic book that you're reading, you just pepper that on top of it, or tie in what the players are doing and just kind of, you know, make that like kind of mesh with it, and you're good to go. So that's kind of my tip is don't wait until you need an adventure or a hook or an encounter to go looking. Kind of look casually as you have time throughout the weeks and have a good little list. And hack, if it's a different group, you can use the same stuff over and over again. Doesn't matter. Even if it's the same group, you can usually get away with it, even if you do some of the stuff James and Jeff just mentioned. So that's my tip. So if you liked this video and you want to hear more about, you know, fun tabletop games and, you know, just creativity in general, that's what we're all about here at Tabletop Terrors. Consider subscribing. And if you hit the notification bell, you'll be alerted whenever we post videos just like this. And so comment below on some of the tricks you use. Where do you draw your inspiration from for adventures in terms of like, is it video games? Is it like, what's your go-to that we missed? We would love to hear that. Now let's wrap it up with a TabTerian Toast.
May you mend the first break.
May you kill the first snake.
May you conquer everything you undertake.
Sláinte.
So people always, I think, have this fear, and this happens to me too, so this isn't me trying to call anyone out. It's just giving permission and easing worries that, like, if you take an idea from an adventure or a video game or something, there's like a worry that like people are gonna recognize it and like call you out on it, of like, hey, that character, you took that guy from that movie, like it's the same guy. It's just like, but I can assure you that will not happen. Like, people, like, the connection in your mind is like so much stronger than everyone else's because you are the one taking the idea and using it. But I promise, as long as it's not literally like the same name with the exact same personality and description, like, then it might be obvious. But if as long as you suit it into whatever you're doing, no one's going to recognize it. No one's going to know. It's just going to seem like you've made up a super cool encounter or a really cool character or a cool story idea, or you've built a really cool world. And yeah, you don't have to worry. People aren't going to call you out on it. They probably won't even know, and they'll just seem really smart.